We hear constant complaints about AI spitting out generic, unhelpful filler. But that frustration doesn't actually stem from model limitations. It stems from a persistent misconception. We tend to assume prompt engineering is this highly technical skill, something reserved for developers and power users. Well, it's not.
Prompting is actually a managerial skill. Think of it as briefing a highly capable but intensely literal collaborator. If you know how to give clear direction to a consultant, or if you can frame a nuanced question for a board of directors, you already have the core competency required. The principles haven't changed at all. Only the medium is new.
To really get this, look at how language models fundamentally differ from search engines. When you search for something, you retrieve existing documents. But language models, they generate statistical text based entirely on your framing. Because they're generating rather than retrieving, they are enormously, almost hypersensitive to how a request is positioned. And that creates a dramatic quality gap between a vague prompt and a structured one. That gap dictates whether you end up with useless boilerplate or immediate, actionable value. Bridging that divide relies completely on specific structuring. It has nothing to do with complex code or deep technical expertise. So, how exactly do we structure that interaction? Well, we apply the exact same discipline you'd use when briefing a capable new hire. An effective executive prompt relies on 5 distinct structural elements to basically fence in the model's output. You start by assigning a role. This shapes the model's assumed expertise and vocabulary. Next, you anchor it with rich situational context, and then a specific task. Finally, you establish strict limits to filter out what you don't need, and you define the exact format of the final output. Take the task phase, for instance. Simply asking the model to list the top 5 risks versus asking it to discuss the risk landscape changes absolutely everything. Using precise verbs and clear constraints drastically reduces the model's need to guess what you actually want. That's how you stop those off-topic, time-wasting responses before they even happen. But structuring the prompt, that's really just the baseline. Effective AI use is a conversation, not a transaction. If you're treating the model's first response as a final, static document, you are leaving substantial value on the table. The initial output is meant to be refined, redirected, and deepened. Embracing this continuous dialogue unlocks some pretty advanced analytical techniques. Take red teaming, for example. You can actually instruct the AI to actively argue against your position, to find flaws in your strategy, or identify risky assumptions. You probe, you push back, and you demand alternatives, all at essentially zero cost. Which brings us to the underlying tension of this whole dynamic. The AI is perfectly suited to handle the breadth, the speed, and the structural heavy lifting. But even the most meticulously crafted prompt cannot replace human editorial judgment. A capable collaborator is ultimately only as useful as the manager directing it. This technology scales our ability to generate material, but it absolutely does not scale our wisdom. Recognizing the tells of low-quality output and applying genuine contextual expertise, that remains a strictly human burden. So the real question is, now that the machine handles the structure, do you have the editorial judgment to know what to discard?